Hello friends, my name is JJ, and if I was to ask you to name some animals, what would be the first ones to pop into your head? Actually, wait, do not answer, because I have done my own pseudo-scientific study in an attempt to resolve this question. As you know, I always like to analyze things from the perspective of American culture, and since nothing provides a better window into American culture than consumerism, I went online and gathered up a bunch of random samples of American consumer goods that depict a medley of animals in some form, and this included this set of Beanie Baby Happy Meal toys, the animals featured on this Animal Crackers box, the animals from this set of Noah's Ark Little People toys, this collection of animal-shaped cookie cutters, the shapes featured in Mott's Animals fruit snacks, as well as those found in Heinz Zoodles, this set of self-proclaimed creative and fun animal stickers, the animals seen on the cover of Eric Carle's Book of Amazing Animals, the animals from this set of wall decals for baby's bedroom, and this adorable animal print bedspread. And having now crunched the data from this hopefully representative sample of animal medleys, I shall now reveal the most commonly reoccurring animal in American commercial culture, and therefore the American cultural imagination. Tied for first, we have elephant and giraffe, who appear on basically everything. They are followed by lion in second, and bear and monkey tied for third, and then panda in fourth. Which is kind of remarkable, right? Of these 6 popular animals, only one is actually indigenous to this continent. The others come from literally the other side of the world. And yet, when you ask a typical American kid what their favorite animal is, they are far more likely to say something like elephant than something that they are likely to have encountered in their actual life, like, say, squirrel. And for that matter, they're also much more likely to say elephant or lion than any other equally exotic animal, like, say, anteater or Gila monster. Now today, we just take this for granted as normal, but it actually originates from a very particular period of American history, the middle of the 19th century, which is so often the case with American cultural phenomena. It was in the Victorian era that we can say that this seemingly random assortment of critters that make up the beloved American animal canon was established for the first time, and it came as the result of a very particularly American thing, the circus. So, in the old days, people living on this continent, and indeed all across the Western world, didn't really know much about the animals found in other parts of this planet. There were no nature documentaries, no National Geographic, no Tier Zoo videos. Most people were incredibly sheltered and didn't know much about anything. This changed once the Europeans began to explore and conquer more and more of Asia, the Middle East, and Africa, where they discovered all sorts of crazy creatures that shocked and amazed them. The late 1700s marked the beginning of the export of exotic animals from the Far East to the West, allowing people to gawk at them with wonder and awe. These sorts of exhibits were known as menageries, and as early as 1806, there had already been menagerie exhibits in the United States showing lions, tigers, elephants, and camels. But getting to view exotic animals in those days was very heavily restrained by geography and class, and remained a very rare and even mystical experience that most Americans could only dream of. I mean, in the days before photography was invented, getting to see weird creatures in real life could be an incredibly emotionally affecting thing, just because nothing could fully prepare you for what it was going to be like. Seeing some great hulking beasts that had been brought over from Asia or Africa, it was like seeing an alien. It was just completely otherworldly. Indeed, when you read about this period of American history, the phrase "seeing the elephant" is often mentioned. This was apparently a generic expression of the time to refer to going through something that was incredibly mind-blowing or even traumatizing. In 1828, a man from New York named J. Purdy Brown decided to capitalize on all of this. He invented a new form of public entertainment that combined live human performances, like clowns and acrobats, with a display of exotic foreign animals, and it was all conducted under a big canvas tent capable of seating hundreds of spectators. J.P. Brown is a pretty obscure figure today, but I would say he deserves the title of Father of the American Circus, just because his idea proved incredibly popular. His concept of making the show mobile was a particularly notable development in the modern evolution of mass entertainment, especially once train travel really began to pick up in the 1860s. The first continental circus, in the sense of a traveling circus that crossed all over the United States, was Dan Costello's Great Show of 1869, which started in Virginia and traveled by train through Tennessee, Kentucky, Missouri, Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas, Wyoming, Utah, and Nevada before ending in California. Dan brought all sorts of wild animals with him on this multi-state extravaganza, which you can see featured prominently in the newspaper ads. The latter half of the 19th century and the early 20th century proved to be the golden age of the American circus. It was a time defined by elaborate shows that crisscrossed the nation by railroad and were run by a handful of circus tycoons who became some of the most famous men of the era. Guys like P.T. Barnum, James Bailey, and the Ringling Brothers. Without getting too hello fellow kids about it, these guys were very much the Mr. Beasts of their time. Professional entertainers who were obsessed with creating grander and grander spectacles to wow the masses, complete with increasingly sensationalistic marketing and hype. Victorian circus posters, truly the first clickbait. But anyway, the point is that it was through the proliferation of the circus as the leading form of middle-class entertainment in a world before motion pictures that most Americans, and especially American children, first began to internalize this particular set of animals as being like what animals fundamentally were. As European colonization of the East continued, so too did knowledge of how to efficiently capture and transport exotic animals without killing them, while new steamship technology made it easier than ever to export them overseas as well. The trade of exotic animals became big business in the late 19th century, popular with a certain class of American and European adventurer who would travel all across the East, making deals with the locals to hunt and capture these wild beasts with the promise of selling them for huge profit to wealthy circus entrepreneurs. And the sorts of animals that proved to be the most profitable were generally those that were the most crowd-pleasing, which basically just correlated to the degree that they were big and shocking in some way, and smart enough to be able to do stunts. Elephants were always popular because they were so big and weird looking. The same was true with giraffes, or as they were often called at the time, camel leopards, which a lot of people thought were just the goofiest looking things they'd ever seen. Lions are scary, but also beautiful and graceful, while zebras at the time were assumed to just be a different kind of horse that could be trained to do horse stunts, although we now know that that's not the case. And of course, monkeys are just funny. The success of circuses, and with them, the rising American awareness of exotic animals, can be largely attributed to the success of the railroad, but the growing wealth of the American middle class during the Victorian age deserves a lot of credit as well. After the Civil War ended, the American economy experienced a great economic boom, born from a growing population, all sorts of new inventions, and a rising class of entrepreneurs who created all sorts of new jobs and industries, all of which resulted in Americans making a lot more money while working considerably fewer hours. This not only gave American families a lot more time to spend on recreational outings like going to the circus, but also a lot more disposable income to spend on things like circus merchandise. Making the most of circus mania, 19th century capitalists quickly began churning out all sorts of circus-themed things to buy, much of which was marketed towards children whose parents, for the first time, could afford to buy them all sorts of random nonsense. Animal crackers were introduced by the great American cookie magnate D.F. Stauffer in 1871 and came in the shapes of lions and elephants and giraffes. They were followed in 1902 by Barnum's animal crackers, which made the circus tie-in even more explicit, coming in packages shaped like railway cars and of course being named after the great P.T. Barnum himself. Toy versions of circus animals became quite popular as well. Little monkeys or elephants or giraffes made of wood or tin or cloth. You see this a lot when you look at Victorian-era Christmas cards. Santa is often depicted giving children little toys of circus animals, Christmas presents themselves being a byproduct of growing middle-class wealth. But adults weren't immune to this sort of stuff either. Circus animals were pushing all sorts of products in 19th century advertisements, from tobacco to more tobacco. People liked to smoke back then, what can I say? Now, of course, the other big cultural force that was helping normalize the exotic beasts of the Far East to Joe and Jane middle-class American was the humble zoo, which it may surprise you to learn is actually a newer thing than the circus, at least in America. The three oldest zoos in the United States are the Central Park Zoo in New York City, the Lincoln Park Zoo in Chicago, and the Philadelphia Zoo, which opened in 1861, 1868, and 1874, respectively. And by the time those things opened, big top circuses had already been touring the country for quite a while. The New York Zoo, for instance, didn't get its first elephants until 1869, by which point P.T. Barnum had already been exhibiting elephants in his circuses for over a decade. Indeed, what is really remarkable is how when American zoos first opened, one of their marketing strategies that they really leaned into was the fact that they had non-circus animals. I really like this line from an 1872 issue of the Philadelphia Inquirer, describing the plans to open a zoo there. The society has already received from our western states and territories large offers of animals, an exhibition of which alone would astonish our people as to the extent and variety of the animals indigenous to this country. Everybody has seen the well-known elephant, tiger, and other beasts of our traveling menageries and circuses, but very few have ever had an opportunity of viewing the rare and almost endless variety of animals to be found around the Rocky Mountains, the Great Prairies, and valleys of the West. So right from the start, the American Zoo sought to present itself as a more sincere and informative curation of authentically American animals. It was a rebellion against what was, even at the time, seen as a rather crass and unnatural exploitation of foreign animals for cheap public amusement. I suppose it also revealed a kind of insecurity about the modern American's increasing urbanization and his growing disinterest towards a natural environment that he was spending less and less time in. But of course, zoos themselves would eventually succumb to the foreign tastes of the vulgar public once they realized that they could draw far bigger crowds with exotic Eastern animals than American ones. Today, I feel like the distinction between what we think of as being stereotypical zoo animals and stereotypical circus animals is rather minimal, with American animals located on a much lower tier of the cultural imagination. Nowadays, I feel like we mostly think of American animals as being associated with like hiking and camping and environmentalism and other stuff that kind of like posits nature as this very pure, distinct thing separate from the modern world. The exception would be the humble bear, who I would say is the only animal with a paw in all three cultural circles. Bears have been trained as circus animals from the start, in part because they have always been interesting to the public in a way that other American animals have not been, for whatever reason. They have accordingly been well represented at all levels of American culture for centuries, and in that sense, I dare say, they may be the most culturally American animal of all. In the latter half of the 20th century, American society steadily turned more and more against the concept of circuses and zoos, as the idea of animal rights and welfare became more and more mainstream. And in response, the pro-zoo and circus people would sometimes make the argument that we needed to keep these things around because they served a valuable educational purpose, helping keep the public aware of these sorts of animals in a way that they might not otherwise be. But in the age of the internet and video on demand, these arguments are not particularly persuasive. I mean, you can learn so much more watching videos of animals in their natural habitat than you can watching them march under some bright stage lights or sleeping in the corner of some glass box. But still, it remains a fascinating cultural phenomenon that despite all of the progress that we have made deepening our knowledge of the natural world, our collective understanding of what animals matter remains so heavily tied to the marketing campaigns of Gilded Age hucksters. So thank you so much for watching. Animal-related content is a new thing for me, but I'm hoping this could be a rich vein of cultural content worth exploring. Let me know in the comments if you have any interesting exotic animal stories of your own, or if you have any ideas for any other animal-related videos I could make. Do not forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you next week.